And welcome back. It's 6:17. Danny Ratliff has just swum into the office. Is it swum or swam?
Both.
It's both?
Yeah.
Because it's not swim. He didn't swim.
He swimmed.
He swimmed. So grammatically, though, swam and swum are the same thing?
Either way, you're sopping wet.
So what you're saying is grammatically, you're not for sure.
Right.
So basically what you're saying is like if I wrote a piece of poetry and then somebody quizzed me on it and I couldn't answer the questions, that might be an issue.
Especially if it shows up on an achievement test.
Exactly. Poet Sarah Hollowbrook, who often writes humorous verse for kids, had some harsh words for Texas Education Agency after she discovered she couldn't answer questions about poems on its own standardized test. Whoops. You know, my kids are absolutely complaining this week because they're not only having their regular tests, they're being STAR tested at the same time. So my daughter's been complaining for the last couple of days how stressed out she is because, you know, she's having to take all these tests. And she came home last night and she's like, I'm going to punch somebody in the throat. And I go, well, first of all, we're not going to go punch anybody in the throat because you're stressed out, babe. I get it. I said, but just look at this as being, you know, you're being prepared for what it's like to work in real life. Because, you know, this is what happens. And you know, you're going to have a project at work, and then right in the middle of your project, somebody's going to come lay something else right on top of you and says, this has got to be done right now. That's the way things actually work. So make sure he's turned on.
That sounds like a personal problem to me.
Well, I understand that. Danny Ratliff is having technical. Try the other one.
Hey, we're here. It's all good.
He can hear you.
Right.
He can't hear you in the headphones.
Gotcha. Well,
I'm
just
working
give him
on it.
another.
Yeah.
Well, I did.
Okay.
We've been through 3. We're okay.
Well, I know, but it's. I think it's a you problem.
We're not.
Me problem. Thanks.
Short
Sound like my wife.
between
Come
the
on,
headsets.
man. Dang.
So, yes, Danny Ratliff in studio today. So just for the break, I was talking a little bit about what's going on with China. And, you know, the issue is, of course, with this trade deal. This is something that I've been talking about now for the last couple of weeks. I've been writing about it. I wrote about this at length yesterday on our website for our technically speaking post, talking about why China is doing what they're doing. Let me read to you something that was from Reuters first, kind of set this conversation up, and I'll tell you what I said was China's position on this yesterday. The diplomatic cable from Beijing arrived in Washington late on Friday night with systematic edits to a nearly 150-page draft trade agreement that would blow up months of negotiations between the world's 2 largest economies. This is according to 3 U.S. government officials. The document was riddled with reversals by China that undermine core U.S. demands, sources told Reuters. In each of the 7 chapters of the draft trade deal, China had deleted its commitments to change laws to resolve core complaints that caused the United States to launch a trade war, which was theft of intellectual property, trade secrets, forced technology transfers, competition policy, and access to financial services and currency manipulation. Now, I told you before that this is how China plays the game. China was having, you know, economic issues last year. Markets were under pressure. And so was the U.S., right? So the U.S., we're down here 20% heading into Christmas. There's lots of pressure all across the board. All of a sudden, because of the financial strains throughout the financial markets, everybody comes to the table, yeah, we got to get a deal done. The markets rally themselves all the way back to all-time highs. Now there's no pressure on anybody. China's economy rebounded. U.S. economy rebounded. So there's no pressure on China to now agree to the things that they said they were going to agree to. And if you thought that China was going to play nice, well, you've got another thing coming. And the reason is exactly why I said this yesterday in our Technically Speaking post, is that China's playing a 50-year game for themselves, right? Their economic outlook, their economic cycle, 50 to 100 years. President Xi is in for life. Okay? So his whole legacy is going to be the rest of his life, what he does with China, versus a guy that's going to be out of office in 1 to 4 years, 5 years. Now, if you're the head of China, are you going to change your entire economic growth plan for a guy who's in office for 1 more year, maybe? or 5 or 4 more years after that, a total of 5 years maybe? No, of course you won't. Now, you may agree to certain small little things right now just to keep relations good and to keep economic trade going, etc., but you're not going to give up your entire economic platform. I've been saying this now for a year and a half since we started this whole thing. China is not going to acquiesce to U.S. demands because it's not in their best interest. Because the next administration that comes in is not going to follow suit with what Donald Trump is doing now. Most likely, the next guy that comes in is going to be a Democrat, and they're going to go in the completely opposite direction. So for China to tie themselves to things that derail their long-term economic growth strategy for a very short-term deal is not beneficial for them, particularly when they know that deal is not going to be enforced over the course of the next 5 years. Now, this is why we talked about this previously, is that when you looked at the deal that was being structured anyway, it was basically a sham to begin with, because the entire deal was predicated on the fact that these rules, these trade negotiations, et cetera, none of them would actually take effect until 2025, which is when? After Donald Trump leaves office, which means that there'll be nobody left to actually enforce the trade agreement to begin with. So this was all kind of just a temporary charade that was being put on by China in order to get things to stabilize in the markets. And now that the markets have stabilized once again, back here at all-time highs, everybody was like cheering and railing, and this is all going to be great. This gives both Donald Trump, and which he did, right? He said he did this on Monday. Markets are all-time highs. I've got room to operate now. Markets are back. The economy's showing a little bit of recovery here from last year. So I can play hardball with China again. And that's what's happening. And that's why the market's been selling off for the last 2 days. We're going to sell off again today, probably. We'll see if the important thing here is that the markets have to hold support at the 50-day moving average. This is critical for today. If we break that, we're going to have a bigger slide, about another 3% back down to the 200-day moving average, which things are going to start getting a little bit dicey at that point, particularly as we move into summer. But this is why we've been talking about in our newsletter as well as in our weekly writings to take profits. We talked about this on the show almost every day. You know, hey, take some money off the table here. This has been a great rally. We trimmed off some profits in our portfolios 2 weeks ago. And the whole reason is that markets don't move straight up. They don't move straight down. They do cycle. And so it's the important part of portfolio management is to work these cycles to your advantage. So that's what's happening here. Now, again, if you want a better understanding of where we are, go to the website, realinvestmentadvice.com. Read yesterday's post. It's our Technically Speaking post, which is Trade War may go away. And this is basically a setup for the entire thesis of what we think will happen this summer. And there's some things that are going on outside of just trade war that are also concerning, right? We're seeing a lot of economic weakness. We're actually seeing a pickup in economic weakness in some of the key indicators globally as well. So pay attention to what's going on here, particularly if you've got money invested, 401k plans, et cetera. But that's why it's also a good time this is also a good time, particularly as we head into summer, to start thinking about, particularly if you're close to retirement, within 5 years, time to start thinking about other retirement, planning strategies, Roth conversions, et cetera. And we actually have a class coming up this weekend.
Yeah,
this
May
Saturday.
11th in the Woodlands. The industry's so good at talking about accumulation. This is as a whole. But nobody ever talks about how do you distribute these assets and how do you do so tax efficiently. And so that's one of the things that we
I don't know what you're talking about, because my kids are distributing my assets all the time.
Hey, of course. But this is something that's a really, I'm not going to say it's an easy way because it's very strategic, but it's a way that you can actually keep more money in your pocket, right? And so we do know a couple of things. We know that taxes we're not at all-time lows, but they're certainly at a very low period. These tax brackets we're likely not going to see past 2025. So you need to take advantage of this environment that we're in. If you're going into retirement and your advisor's not talking to you about how do you distribute these assets, how do you look at Roth conversions, how do you look at alternative strategies to put funds away that give you more flexibility in retirement, this is a class for you. This is something that I think that you can get a whole lot of information out of. The other aspect of this is how do you make smart distribution strategies with Social Security? This is a retirement you can't outlive if done right. And so it needs to not be based just on you. It needs to be based on you and your spouse. We talk about Medicare, how to keep more money in your pocket. With that goes back to what we just talked about with having more flexibility in retirement during the distribution phase, because you can have surcharges on your Medicare premiums, and that can cost you a lot of money. So this is going to be something that, is going to be very insightful no matter where you are, but particularly for those gearing up towards retirement, thinking about alternative strategies to put assets aside to give you that flexibility. The other thing is, Lance, where we're at. Markets, we're back to all-time highs. Mm-hmm. How do you invest? That's a big kicker right there. Everybody just says, oh, don't worry about it. You'll be good. Well, buy and hold.
Sounds great, except the expected return for stocks over the next 5 years?
What's
Zero.
That? Zero. So,
and I'll tell you why when we come back from the break.
Great.
Everybody just went, huh?
Hey, so go to riaadvisors.com. Go to the events tab. Sign up. We'd love to see you there Saturday. Still have a little bit of room. That's riaadvisors.com. We'll be right back after this break.
There you go.
Catch the Lance Roberts Show anytime, day or night, online at lancerobertshow.com.